I had been a junior deck officer on the Hollow Vard for 2 years before I ever learned the janitor's name. That tells you something about how we treated her. Not cruelly, nobody was cruel to her. We simply didn't see her, the way you don't see the hum of recycled air or the seams in the deck plating. She came through the lower engine corridor every third watch with her cart and her mop, cleaning around our boots while we stood arguing about the dead reactor core, and none of us moved for her, and none of us asked. Her name was Yenna Sword. I only know that now because I read it off a service record that should not have existed anymore. The Vard was a relic by the time I served on her, a warcruiser 2 generations obsolete, kept in low orbit as a training hull and parts depot, crewed by 60 of us who'd drawn the short straw. Her primary reactor core had gone dark 9 years before I arrived. Whole teams of engineers had come through since, good ones, decorated ones, and everyone filed the same report. The resonance chamber was fused beyond repair. Scrap it for the alloy. Stop wasting fuel crews on a corpse. Nobody scrapped it. Fleet Command kept finding reasons to delay. I used to think that was bureaucratic laziness. I was wrong about a great many things that year. I remember the evening it changed because I'd pulled a double shift and had no good reason to be in that corridor so late. The overhead lights had gone to their dim cycle. The core sat behind its scarred housing the way it always sat, a great dead heart nobody had bothered to remove, and Yenna was there with her cart, working the same stretch of decking she worked every night, humming. She always hummed. 3 notes low in her chest, repeated without variation, the kind of tune a person hums when they've stopped noticing they're doing it. I'd heard it 100 times and never once listened to it. That night I listened, because the core answered her. It wasn't dramatic. I want to be honest, because if I dress it up you'll imagine sparks and alarms, and that isn't what happened. A single status lamp on the housing, amber, long dead, caked in 9 years of dust, came up soft and steady, like an eye opening slowly because it was in no hurry. Then a hum rose from inside the chamber, climbing to meet the 3 notes in her throat, the way a person finishing a sentence finishes the word you started. Yenna stopped mopping. She straightened, slow, the way her age made her do everything, and she set her hand flat against the housing the way you'd lay a hand on a horse's neck to tell it you're still there. She didn't look surprised. That was the thing that struck me even before I understood any of it. She looked like a woman greeting someone she'd been expecting for a long time. "There you are," she said to the engine, not to me. She hadn't noticed me yet. I should have called it in. Standard procedure for any reactor activity, dead core or not, is immediate report to the duty officer. I stood there instead and watched an old janitor talk quietly to a piece of machinery that 9 engineering teams had certified beyond recovery, and some instinct in me, older than training, told me to keep my mouth shut and watch. The hum steadied. Power telltales I'd never seen lit in that housing climbed, one after another, gentle as a sunrise. Yenna kept her hand on the plating, head bowed slightly, like she was listening to something under the metal, and after a while she hummed again, the same 3 notes, softer now, and the engine's pitch matched her, note for note, patient and exact. That was when she saw me. She didn't startle. She straightened the rest of the way and looked at me with an expression I can only call apologetic, as if she'd been caught doing something embarrassing rather than something impossible. "It's been a long time since anyone's down here this late," she said. "What did you do?" My voice came out smaller than I wanted. "Nothing," she said. "I never do anything, I just say hello." I didn't believe her, and I didn't have the rank to demand an answer, so I did the only thing I could think to do. I called Admiral Kreth. I want to explain who Kreth Salin was to us, because it'll tell you how strange it was that he came down himself, at that hour, instead of sending a junior engineer to file a report. Kreth was Fleet, old Fleet, 3 campaigns deep, the kind of officer young crew were taught to address only when addressed first. He had no reason to walk down to a dead training hull's engine deck for a status lamp. But when I told him what I'd seen, haltingly, sure he'd think I was inventing it, he didn't ask me to repeat myself. He asked one question. Is she humming? I said yes. I asked how he knew. He didn't answer. He came down himself, alone, no aide, no second officer, moving faster than I'd ever seen a man his age move on that ship. When he turned into the corridor and saw Yenna standing with her hand still resting on the warming housing, he stopped as if he'd walked into a wall. I have served under careful men my whole career. I have never before or since seen a careful man's face come apart the way Kreth's did in that moment. He didn't look at the engine. He looked at her. Sword, he said, just that. Like the word had been sitting in his chest for years, waiting for permission to leave. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. Hello, Kreth. I didn't understand yet. I stood at the edge of that corridor while two old people looked at each other across 30 meters of deck plating and 9 years of silence, and the engine hummed on between them like it had never doubted this would happen. It took Kreth the better part of an hour to tell me what he hadn't told anyone in the crew, because no one left aboard had been serving when it happened. Yenna Sword had built the resonance systems on every cruiser of the Vard's generation, back when the fleet was still fighting a war most of us now only studied in academy lectures. She hadn't just maintained the engines. She designed their hearts, tuned each resonance chamber by hand, by ear, in a process no instrument ever fully replicated, because she said machines built by hand answer best to a hand they know. Then came an order, deep in that war, to push the Corps past rated tolerance for a strike she believed would kill more of our own crews than it would harm the enemy. She refused. She was not the kind of engineer Fleet Command could simply remove, so they erased her instead. Quietly stripped from every active record, reassigned under administrative cover to menial postings, moved ship to ship for 9 years under a clean name and a janitor's rank, until whoever did the moving lost track of why, and she ended up here, mopping the same corridor as the engine she'd built with her own hands, dead and waiting, the whole time. For a frequency no fleet engineer had ever thought to try, because no fleet engineer had ever been told to look for a person instead of a fault. 9 years, Kreth said, and every team that came through called this thing a corpse. 9 years and you walked past it every night. I didn't walk past it, Yenna said. I talked to it, same as always. It just took a while to believe I was staying. Kreth offered her the bridge. Not metaphorically, full reinstatement, her old rank restored, chief engineer of the fleet's whole reconstruction program if she wanted it, said plainly in front of the small crowd. The noise had drawn down into the corridor. I watched her consider it the way you'd consider an old coat that no longer fit quite right. No, she said gently, like she was declining a second helping at supper. I'm 61. I've made my peace with mop water. She looked past him at the engine, still humming low and content in its housing, lights climbing steady through systems that had no business waking so fast. But I'd like to keep this corridor. Same shift. I'll tend her properly now since she's awake. Nobody else needs to learn her notes. She already knows mine. Kreth didn't argue. I think he understood better than I did then, that some things, once they've been loved properly by the right hands, only ever answer to those hands again, and that there are people in this world who do not want to be given back their old name so much as they want permission to keep doing, openly, the quiet thing they never stopped doing in secret. She still cleans that corridor. I still see her every third watch, mop and cart, humming 3 low notes I know now by heart, and the engine humming back, warm and steady, the only 2 voices in that hallway that never once needed an audience to mean what they meant. I stop and nod to her now. She nods back. Neither of us makes more of it than that. But I notice her. That's the part I think about most, the part I'd go back and change if I could go back at all. Not what she did to that reactor, but how long the rest of us walked past a woman who'd built the bones of our whole fleet, and saw only a uniform that meant nothing to us, and never once thought to ask her name.